Hello, I am François-Xavier Ragot, principal at Heidrick Struggles and member of our global financial services practice. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Lieve Mostrey, the CEO of Euroclear, a leading global provider of financial market infrastructure services. Lieve started her career at Generale Bank in Brussels, then moved to Fortis and BNP Paribas Fortis. During this period, Lieve worked in IT, operations, and as country manager. In 2010, Lieve joined Euroclear Group as Chief Technology and Services Officer, and she became CEO in 2017. Earlier this year, Lieve won a prestigious award in Belgium, the Trends Manager of the Year. Lieve, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
So Euroclear has a specific business which the general public is less aware of. What makes it so special?
Well, to simplify, I would say that we are a bit like the notary or the bookkeeper or the registrar of all that has to do with securities transactions. So we make sure that people that sell and buy securities are certain to get their cash when they sell securities, or certain to get their securities when they pay their cash. We safekeep those securities for all professionals across the globe, and we also allow them to use it as collateral to mobilize it very efficiently for all kinds of needs of financing that are required. With that, we safekeep around 39 trillion euros worth of securities on our books. That is 39 and 12 zeros. And the transactions that we make are more than €2 quadrillion worth a year, which is about world GDP that goes over our books every month of the year.
You told me recently that you want your clients to feel that the value they received is twice the price they pay. How do you make sure that your teams, your workforce, has the same motto in their day-to-day operations?
Well, our teams are very motivated and we encourage them to be very close to the clients. I like to call it client empathy. We really need to understand those needs of the clients, and that is where if a client can, thanks to a number of tools that Euroclear give them, for instance, do more transactions with the same level of capital because we have reduced the risk substantially. If they can benefit the scale effects of the entire market rather than running a process themselves, if they can benefit of joint investments that are done at Euroclear rather than every market actor doing it, that is really contributing to that higher value than price they pay.
So the world is transforming faster than anyone could imagine. Which factors are impacting your business the most, and how has this changed the way you lead over the last few years?
Well, I would say, if I think about the factors that have impacted our business most, I will put them in two categories. The first category is certainly technological evolution. We see blockchain, we see AI, and we see really the possibility to bring different type of solutions in even different business models towards our clients. It remains a fact that the trust of a party like ourselves is a big differentiating factor that we can bring to the agenda, but we have to stay very, very open to all those technological evolutions, the possibilities they bring, and we have to be on the forefront on doing that. And we have a number of examples. We have already a number of use cases with artificial intelligence, both for ourselves, internal efficiencies, but also towards our clients. And on the other hand, if I look at the blockchain technology, we have done in the third quarter last year a very innovative issuance with the World Bank on a digital issuance, on a new primary issuance platform that then was connected to the regular environment. So we have a digital issuance that can now also be used as collateral on the secondary market. So it is for us important on the technological front to really stay at the forefront of all of these evolutions. And then the second big factor that I would call that has certainly influenced us is the geopolitics. We come from a very global, open world, which was the case, I would say, until a number of years ago. And we were thriving very strongly on that because our role is to connect international investors with issuers, countries from all over the world. And that is an important part of our business. But we see that the geopolitical agenda adds new challenges to that, adds new complexities to that, and the Russian file is just a big example of that.
Mm-hmm. Of course. So, Lieve, what are the implications from a leadership perspective?
Well, I think what we have seen over the past number of years is that we have had several big crises to manage that were requiring a lot of focus on the short term, obviously. But on the other hand, we could as leadership not lose our eye of the ball for the long-term evolutions and implications for which we needed to stay connected as well. I would also say that the crises were very different to manage. If I think back at the COVID crisis, we unfortunately at Euroclear were very, very early on confronted with the loss of a colleague. So we were very, very fast aware of how severe this was going to be. But this was a crisis of which nobody really knew ex ante how that was going to evolve. And then we said very, very clearly, we have a simple strategic goal on how to manage this crisis. This is we want to have to protect the client service and the health of our people. And they go hand in hand because without healthy people, it's hard to have a good client service. So this was a clear mantra that we really repeated all over the organizations. These are the two goals at this instance. And we were very fast on the ball to have everybody working from home, full-fledged, without limitations. And with that, because the COVID crisis came, if you remember, with a peak of transactions and activity on the stock markets because of the uncertainty, which is often the case. So whilst managing a crisis like everybody else, on top of that, we also had to manage record volumes. So we were pretty successful in there. And having that strategic intent as of the offset of a crisis, I think it's always very important. When we had 2 years later, it was exactly almost 2 years later, the invasion in Ukraine, which created immediately the sanctions, and for us the awareness how impactful that we have to think about, and there the strategic intent was we have to protect the company. Protecting the company on the one hand by applying the sanctions in the most rigorous, correct way, because you know that in sanctions, if you're not doing the right thing, you expose a company to huge fines. But on the other hand, given the specific relations that we had historically built with Russia, we had to make sure that the consequences of that on the P&L, on the balance sheet, etc., would be managed in the safest possible way for the company. So I always say in a crisis, it is worth to take the time to reflect about the strategic intent of your crisis management. Then you need to try to put it in an important place, but it cannot be the only place because you have to continue to run your company for the normal business as well. And you have to be able to evolve the company, especially with long-lasting, impactful crises. You have to be able to continue the innovation, to continue your focus on that safety and efficiency for your clients. And so that is a challenge that we have been facing over the past number of years.
Could you tell us more about how your risk department is doing scenario planning?
That is a very important factor of the job that we have been adding more and more over the past number of years. So we have a team that every quarter does what we call horizon scanning. And the horizon scanning is really there to look at small things that are happening in the ecosystem, across clients, but also in the overall economy, in the overall politics, and to reflect on what could be the implications, both from a probability angle and from an impact angle for Euroclear. And we really try to list those events every quarter and to size them from impact and probability, and to reflect on what would it take from risk management tools, from business development tools, as a company to respond correctly to them. It's very interesting to see that for most of the recent crises that have appeared, our teams have been able to include them ex ante in their horizon scanning. So I find that a great achievement that we were able to do that. Luckily, some that were spotted have not occurred. That is also good news, I would say. But it is a very important reflection that I recommend for everybody, especially in these fast-moving times and in these sometimes very impactful events that can happen.
Did you spot SVB or Credit Suisse?
That is the one, the SVB one we didn't spot. Credit Suisse was, how would I say, a longer burning case of uncertainty. I think all people that were working with Credit Suisse knew that they were struggling for quite a while, but it was then the SVB uncertainty that accelerated the whole file. So on Credit Suisse we were well prepared. The SVB file, frankly, that was a bit more of a surprise, but it was also further away, not impacting clients, etc.
So in your view, what is the difference between a good and a great leader?
I take my own definition for that. Everybody has their own definitions, but I think a great leader can get the maximum of the material he has, I always say. And the material, with that I mean the human resources, the teams. It's easy to say that you will be a champion if you work with only world champions, but that's never reality. I think you have to be able to motivate your people, to really bring out the best out of them, to spot their talents and use their talents at the best way, and with that having a diverse team that brings the best for the company. That, I believe, is a great leader. But that's just my definition.
What would be your advice to a first-time CEO?
My first-time CEO is still, it's already more than 7 years ago. But I think, and before I had been in many occasions, I would call a number two. And the big difference is that even as number two, you are in the co-decision of all important things. So you know the technicalities, you know the reasoning, but it is still very different when you talk to somebody before taking a decision. As CEO, you have to stand ready to really be the last person, take those decisions, and sometimes that will be very lonely. And I think it is better to be really prepared for that loneliness, for that, being the last one to take the decisions. But in my own case, it was a bit of searching my way the first weeks, but after the first few weeks, you get used to that.
So in a recent conversation, you confessed to me that you were able to find a person in your non-professional life that you could reach out to share your challenges.
Well, I think it is indeed very important that as a leader, you work with your team, you share a lot with your team, but you can have a personal doubt, you can have a difficult moment, and it's not always with your colleagues, with your team that you're going to share that. And in a good professional private life balance, I would always recommend to have a person outside your professional life where you can have those sharing of thoughts, those sharing of your doubts, those sharing of a difficult moment. And for me, I was very happy. My partner has a long-standing professional career as an HR manager, by the way, but he had already stepped down since a while. So that was for me the perfect support that I could dream about in more difficult moments in the professional life.
What would we do without our partners?
Indeed, indeed.
So Euroclear has an important IT organization, which typically is more a male environment. What are your key takeaways of being a female leader in such an environment?
Well, I do believe, I'm a strong believer in diversity and inclusion. And I think even beyond gender diversity, we have to be wary for what I call monocepage. You want a good blend. You want a good blend of different characters, of different academic backgrounds, of different nationalities, of different gender. I say, if you all think the same way, it's easy to believe that the world is flat. In order to see all the dimensions, you need a diverse view. And I think that is true across organizations, and that is true in an IT organization as well. And it is a fact that IT organizations still today have a lower proportion of ladies working there. And so we have to be very attentive to that. We have to make sure that the management teams find this balance and that we avoid a bit of groupthink that could exist. But I do recommend for ladies in those environments to remain authentic. The last thing you want to do is to blend in. If you want to have the benefits of the diversity, it takes a lot of courage, but you have to remain true to yourself, otherwise we will not have that advantage. So it's also a big role for leaders, men or women, to remain attentive and to remain open and to push for that inclusivity, to make sure that the different views come to the table, that there is really room for this argument and counter-argument, and respect for it. That is very, very important. I would say, contrary to what many people believe, when I started working more than 40 years ago in finance, there were already a few female leaders at the Danske Bank, where I started, that were very senior. And so I could take inspiration from them. I could really see how they were evolving, and I thought in those days that it would be very natural for women to make career. This has been a point where I have been disappointed. I saw that a few ladies make it, but if you look at today's world, we are not yet that much more ladies at the top than decades ago. So I could get inspired. I hear that some people at Euroclear, for instance, take inspiration both of myself and my successor, Valérie Urbain, who's also a lady, who will be the next CEO. But I still worry that there are too little in order to make it mainstream, and that we have to continue to work on the gender agenda.
What do you think are the obstacles?
It is, I think it's a sum of things. I think it is a sum of things. I believe that it's a societal element. There are still a number of, I would say, prejudged ideas in society against ladies making a career. We have to watch very carefully that some of the things that were historically even easier as today, I think, for instance, about childcare. I believe that childcare today is harder to find than it was when I was a young mother. It's a sad thing to see. So there are a number of societal elements. In our organizations, I believe that we still have a number of male leaders that have not equipped themselves with recognizing female talent, because it manifests itself somewhat different than male talent. It has a bit to do with bullishness and these kind of things. So we really have to pay attention to that as well. HR practices that objectifies are very, very important there. And I believe that we have to continue also to educate our girls with sufficient confidence to be ambitious and to trust themselves in what they know and how they can live up to the expectations. So it's a sum of things, and we have to work on all the fronts.
You just referred to the concept of authenticity. You also mentioned the idea of vulnerability in another conversation.
Yes. I think they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. Nobody, unless it's people that fool themselves, I would say, nobody can be a hero, can be certain of everything, can be without doubt, can be without hesitation all of the time. That does not exist. If you're honest with yourself, you cannot know everything, and you cannot believe that you know everything. And that's where you have to ask questions. You have to dare saying, well, I don't really know this. Help me, how would you do this? I'm not certain about this. What is your view? I think by taking such an attitude, you really invite people to what I said as part of being a great leader, you invite people to bring the best of themselves for the benefit of finding solutions, of managing the company, of setting direction, and I think that is very important. And if people feel that you are authentic and not afraid to be vulnerable, well, they will not fall in the same trap of saying, I have to know everything, and sometimes say no matter what.
So how do you evaluate the level of authenticity and vulnerability in the broader financial services industry?
Well, I believe that it has found a bit more resonance post the financial crisis. And I hope it does, because I believe it's also a factor for better risk management. If you have this vulnerability, if you have this openness for different views, and if you have a real attitude of avoiding groupthink, I believe that will create better risk management, and that will avoid dramas like we have seen in the financial crisis. So I think there is a bit more openness for that. This being said, we have to be wary that the lessons learned are not forgotten too fast.
So Lieve, you are stepping down from CEO of Euroclear in May 2024. What are your plans for the future?
Well, I will have been almost 7.5 years CEO, so I think I was reading recently that is absolutely the average of CEOs nowadays. But I still have a lot of energy. And so I really want to contribute by being a non-executive director in a number of companies. I have had the opportunity to be elected on the board of Danske Bank very recently, that I will take up as soon as my mandate as CEO stops. And I am in a number of other discussions to transform my life into a non-executive portfolio.
So indeed, you already have a non-executive director experience in the board of Swift, Will Dolmen and Euronext. You just mentioned you are starting in the board of Danske Bank in a few weeks, and you have a long experience sitting on the board of Euroclear as an executive. So what are the key learnings you retain from sitting on these different boards?
I would say with all those experiences and with what I have seen, I think we should collectively understand that being a non-executive and being an executive is very different. And we should not blur those lines. I think the executives should feel themselves fully empowered to do their job, to run the company. They are in the detail, they are in the teams, they are in the knowledge. And as non-executive, our role is really to support them when things are difficult, to challenge them when things are easy, but especially to bring a broader perspective, potentially a more longer-term horizon, ask questions that they might not have asked themselves. So a non-executive should never feel that they have to improve what the executive has done. But we have to take what the executive has done and say, okay, but if you look at it from this angle or against that perspective or with that time horizon, do you still come to the same conclusions? That is for me the big role of the non-executive. And I think it is really important. Sometimes the non-executives are called a bit the fourth line of defense in this very longer term, broader perspective. And not blurring those lines is very essential in my view.
So how do you envisage the transition for you?
Well, I think I will challenge myself on a regular basis when I ask questions to the executives in the companies where I will be a non-executive, to make sure that those are questions that are really in line with my view. Are they really bringing this broader perspective, or is really bringing a challenge towards an angle that maybe has not been included? I will continuously ask myself that question to make sure that I respect the executives in their role.
You used the image of monocépage a bit earlier, so you prefer monocépage or blend, if we talk about wine?
I certainly love the good blends that you can find in Bordeaux, that you can find in Tuscany, but I never say no to a good Bourgogne either, which is monocépage.
Now we're talking. Lieve, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.